Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, sometimes things just happen, and you gotta roll them, no matter how weird they are. But if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I am the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brains about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started. I don't know, anything else I can think of. But it's usually a fun time. And if you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, we certainly hope that you do. You can find us over at Apple, over at Spotify, or you can find every single one of our episodes archived over on our YouTube channel. We'd love it if you'd follow us on social media as well, either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for all sorts of updates. And finally, please visit us where it all began over at intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest movie news, reviews, and anything else in between, really. Just, we got a hard-working team there, and come show them some love. But this is going to be an interesting day because we're talking with Julian DeZotti from For the Record, which is now streaming on CBC Gem, and it's a love story, but it's about the power of music, and it's basically 6 little short films, but they all have an interconnection, and they all have a relationship to music, and there is sort of a really fascinating overarching story, and it's one of those projects that really only would have worked on a streaming service, because it is now on CBC Gem, if you want to check it out. It allows the art of storytelling to really to sort of expand and push interesting boundaries. And we talk with star and creator, as I said, Julian DeZotti. We just talk about the origins of the project, how we got it all done, just how important music is, just sort of in storytelling, and how music is storytelling in and of itself, and a whole bunch of other stuff in between. And it's Julian Day because if you may have noticed, but we've dropped 3 interviews today, all with somebody whose first name is Julian, and that's the weird part of this day, and we're just going to roll with it. So we hope you enjoy this one, and go check out For the Record over on CBC Gem. It's a lot of fun. All right. Now, I mean, obviously, congratulations. I mean, I really did get a kick out of it. And I mean, I'm kind of curious what sort of, like, give me the origin story for kicking this off, because the whole time I was watching, it's like, oh, maybe this would be a show, or no, this could have been a feature. But no, after watching it all, I'm like, no, with the arc that everything was set up, it was like, no, this works kind of perfectly.
Oh, great. Yeah, I mean, like a lot of things do. It started with a very painful breakup, and I was sitting there with the rest of my records after I divvied them up with my ex, and I looked at all the albums, and it just dawned on me that each of these albums tells the story of our relationship. This was the first album we bought together. This was our first Christmas album. This was our first dinner date. This was our first Christmas and our first slow dance, our first fight, all these different moments, that the hallmarks of a relationship were spelled out in these records. So I thought that would make a great continuing story. And I was just very much interested in trying to tell a story about connection and unity in a time of division, especially just with how things can be pretty polarizing and feel that way. And I always see music as the great equalizer, the thing that, one song can mean many different things to different people, but at the end of the day, it does have the power to start a conversation or to heal pain or bring us together in some way. So, it was important to me to use the relationship, like the love story that everyone can relate to, as sort of the pillar or the foundation of the story. And then from there, using that as the springboard to tell a wide variety of different kinds of love stories, from different perspectives, different cultures, different point of views, and amplifying maybe some stories or points of views that don't necessarily get the kind of attention they need. So that was, yeah, I would say that was sort of, in the nutshell, that was the impetus. And then just the ability of using the song as the hook for the episode, make the song the story. I just felt that was a device or a hook that hadn't been used before. And it was a story that I was interested in telling and seeing. So that sort of helped amplify the story overall.
No, for sure. And I mean, I think for me, I think that hook really did come from that first episode, because I mean, I think it just really gets encapsulated in the fuck Spotify line, because people
Yeah.
people who have collections like this don't understand, like people who don't have collections like this don't quite understand sort of the emotional attachment to the physical
Yes.
record, to the physical piece of media that's going on, especially when you have to divvy up collections like that.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. They're like children almost, and so to see them breaking those things for real, it's such a visceral, painful response, but it's, I think, a great way of dramatizing, those memories that you create together that kind of either get broken or disappear once you and that person are no longer together. So the records themselves, as you say, like sort of the physical manifestation of a relationship, really it really comes through, I think, and that's what we tried to convey for sure.
Now, what came first in this process? Was it the writing and the different love stories, or was it sort of the music? Because I mean, obviously, getting clearances can be a nightmare unto itself.
Oh yeah. Just I always start with the story. For me, it was the stories that I wanted to tell. And how do you weave, and music was always going to be the thing that sort of weave them together. And certainly had my song favorites that I wanted to, my dream list. And when I presented the project to my music supervisor, David Heyman, who sadly is no longer with us, but had such a sort of a crazy passion and really believed in this show. We were so fortunate. Without him, we would not have been able to make it. And he, leveraged the relationships he had with publishers and labels to get us this music. But when I presented him with the scripts, he's like, "Oh, most of these songs are with Universal, so let me go to them sort of as a package deal and say, hey, here's an independent Canadian creator who's really trying to make a piece of high production value content for Canadian audiences and hopefully international audiences. And you guys are always looking for an excuse to sell your catalog. And some songs, that maybe don't usually get as much action or play. And from there, then it was, okay, you can't get Marvin Gaye, but what is another protest song that has equal sort of value to an audience? Because I think it was important that this music, because it's recognizable, it does elevate the production value, or sort of the nostalgic factor for audiences, because they know these songs and they recognize them. Not to give short shrift to independent audiences, but I think, or independent artists rather, musicians, but because it's Bob Marley, it just kind of elevates the show a little bit more. So it was, when we couldn't get the songs we wanted, it was me and David sort of thinking about, okay, what are the songs that could be complementary to this, that have just as much value. And that's kind of how we worked through it. But for the most part, I got lucky. The songs I wanted, we got. It was really just one or two that we had to change our minds on, but the other ones, we got really lucky.
Was the anthology structure of it all sort of always there, or was it something that sort of developed as you were putting it all together? Because I do love how each episode does kind of hook back unto itself as we go forward through the series.
Oh, great. I'm glad. It was a mixture of both. I love anthology series. I love ensemble pieces. As a writer, that's always something I try and write too. I just love interconnected stories, finding ways to, it just is so satisfying as an audience member and as a viewer when you can set up all these different storylines and then find a really clever way to bring them together. I also thought the anthology, again, it feels like an album, an album itself is a cohesive whole of, thematically, or kind of even musical compositions, but each song, it can be very different. So I think I wanted to sort of transpose that, the album as a concept onto a television show. And then the third part is, I still love it, but I started in the theater, and a student of the theater as an actor and a writer. And there's a play called La Ronde, which David Hare made, called The Blue Room. He's translated it, but it's romantic scenes. It's pairs. So two people in a scene, and then you follow one of those characters into the next scene. There's a scene with two people, then you follow that other person to the next, and then it loops back around at the end. So I've kind of, done my version of La Ronde. And so you find a way to tell separate stories, but also connect them through the different characters that appear in each episode.
How do you think sort of just the onslaught of just how we get our content and how we get our entertainment these days has sort of changed the game for you as a creator? Because even like as early as like 10 years ago, if you had pitched to somebody to try to get money to make 6 15-minute short films, with this overarching story, somebody would have said, well, why don't you just make a 90-minute movie? You know what I mean? But
for
now
sure,
it's something that seems more acceptable in sort of the mainstream to be able to get our stories in this kind of fashion.
Yeah, I think it's the medium, the content delivery services themselves have changed. It's streaming, so that means you can get it anywhere. You don't have to be on your television. Everyone's consuming a lot of content via their phone. So a shorter form or a mid-length format is agreeable to people. I think it's twofold. I'm on it sort of from two different perspectives. One, as a business person trying to sell this, it can still present challenges to the wider marketplace.
Yeah.
A lot of these places don't want to buy short form content, so you have to repackage it as longer episodes or as a feature. It's only the ones that are really lucky that, if they have big names attached, it's like, I don't care if it's 2 minutes or 28 minutes, I want it because those people are attached to the show. And that's still what is the main force that drives the marketplace. The other hope with the short form part of it is that there is more ability to get some virality out of it. Some shorter things might just resonate online and are easily shareable, but that comes with big ad spends and big ad buys online and having influencers in your content who are going to push your show. I think the biggest challenge for me is, you can make the greatest show on earth, but if you don't have the money and the influencing background and backup to push it out into this tsunami of content out there right now, you just won't break through the noise. You need something that either it's an amalgamation of elements, which is, Johnny Orlando, famous music, maybe some recognizable stars, really great story, CBC Gem. You need all these elements that will hopefully move the needle. But even then, yeah, I'm sure you're feeling this. Arts coverage is it's just really hard to come by these days. Like, there's not a lot out there, just because, especially with the pandemic,
Yeah.
arts divisions are the first place to go. So it's really hard to get some visibility on the show. So for me, luckily, as a creator, I can still make something like this because I live in a country that will fund short form and mid-length formats like this. We had three funds at three different levels of our government that, allowed us to make this show. And the hope is that it will resonate outside of Canada and we can sell it internationally and then make it into a half-hour show. That way it's more palatable for a Hulu or a Netflix. That's the ultimate goal. But you need $10 million to make a half-hour series. We've got, a very small fraction of that. So this is our way of making the story we really, really want to make. There's a lot of freedom in this medium, which is, you're very fortunate. You don't have people breathing down your necks with their opinions, their creative opinions. We really did have creative free reign to sort of really tell the story we wanted to tell. So there's something wonderful about that. But you ultimately do want to get to that point where you can work on a really good budget and make shows, episodes that are longer and resonate even farther than this one will. So hopefully that answers your question, but there's a lot of things to consider with the changing media landscape for sure. It's very difficult.
No, absolutely. But it does speak to just sort of the flexibility of the modern storyteller as well, because I mean, you got a lot of different people involved in this, and a lot of people got excited about it and were participated in it, and probably for not a lot of money. And it's
Yeah.
one of those things where you can see sort of the art form of storytelling evolving a little bit, and really especially with this show, how so much was centered around, well, it wasn't written to the song specifically, it was centered around the music. So
Hmm.
sort of it was
Hmm.
almost engrossing, in fact, like they were
Hmm.
really sort of had to go side by side to make it work.
Yeah, right. Gotcha. Yeah, I totally agree. Storytelling is evolving. I mean, you have to be able to evolve, and it's just everything has changed so much. And now with pandemic, a lot of these legacy media companies are, I mean, they have to really adapt. Otherwise, they will not survive. So, they're looking for the things that are going to make the most noise, as they say in the
Yeah,
space.
yeah.
And I really love our show, but that first episode, it's subtle and it's dramatic, and that's, is it the bang you need to start off a show and get someone's attention? I don't know. I think it depends, but it's so hard to get something out of the gate that's really going to make an impact and stay in the zeitgeist for longer than a headline. It's really challenging. It's very challenging.
No, for sure. But I mean, even specifically with that first episode, I mean, there is, and I mean, it's a cliche comparison, but there is sort of the high fidelity vibe to it that
Totally.
sort of allows a sort of an entry point for people to sort of explore it even further. And I mean, that's
Great.
important too.
Yes, for sure. Yep, it's true. Yeah, great question.
Now, I mean, I guess just for you thinking back, is there a moment or even like a movie that you saw when you were a kid that kind of got you into this business where sort of the light bulb went off and went, okay, I gotta write, I gotta perform. This is what I want to do going forward.
Yeah. I would say there's three moments. One, the first one was Bob Barker. I was obsessed with Price is Right
I love
and
it.
being Bob Barker when I was a child.
I
So,
love it.
I had to, many a Christmas and family gathering where it was me and a microphone, and just feel sorry for my relatives. So that was the first moment I knew that I wanted to be a performer or a host or a game show host or something like that. And then I got, in grade school, I got really obsessed with watching movies. I go to the library and watch a ton of movies. So I watched a lot of, the Hollywood new wave, so 60s and 70s movies. And that, I would say the big one was Network was the big one for me. That
Nice.
was like, oh my God, you can make something like this. And it's one of those movies I watch once a year because it's still so relevant. It's insane how relevant it is. And there's something theatrical about it and exciting. And the performances, those people have never done better. So that was sort of the crux of, okay, I want to be a filmmaker. I want to make something. That was sort of the movie that I think did it. And then Magnolia, when I was 18, I was just finishing high school and I was just obsessed with that movie. And that was when I was like, okay, I have to be a filmmaker. So I'm going to tour and start writing my own scripts. And so those would be like the three touchstones, I think, for me. And, so many other influences, but David Letterman was a big one in there too. But I would say those three: Bob Barker, Network, and Magnolia. Yeah.
I think that's the first time Bob Barker has ever been on a list with Network and Paul Thomas Anderson and
Right. I know, what an amalgamation of sorts. Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, at the same time, that really does kind of speak to the modern media landscape where like artists and creators are pulling from so many different sources just to try to make something
Total.
sort of stand out. Because I mean, in this day and age, like you say, there is so much noise that it's nearly impossible to break through. But I mean, I'm kind of curious from your perspective, how do you, like, can you focus on that, on sort of that need to breaking through, or do you just have to hope that the work stands for itself and the cream kind of rises to the top when it's meant to rise to the top?
I still want to believe that latter sentiment because I do believe it. But I mean, here I am 15 years later, and I think, For the Record is by far, I've done a lot, but this is still, I think, the most accomplished thing I've done. But it's, the real work, we launched Friday, but now the real work begins. It's about letting it live in online, and it has to garner some attention. It has to be able to keep moving through the ether, and hopefully people start to talk about it and start to have conversations about it. Then you get people who write about it, then you get people who post about it, and then that's how you get the visibility. Nowadays it's just very, very challenging. I'd like to believe if the show is good enough, it will be found, but there's just so many other considerations beyond, the merit of one piece of work. Is it noisy enough? Is it like grabbing someone's attention? Is the story something so different that we've never seen before? Are you properly representing all the different kinds of communities? It's just like you have to have all these considerations in mind. And, the internet is a crazy thing. And, a lot of the bigger companies who have budgets can just literally throw money at marketing online, which I think it's just such a key to the whole puzzle. And if you don't have the financial backing when you're marketing your show, you really are at a disadvantage. I've made many things that are really great that I'm proud of that no one's ever seen. So you do have to spend a considerable amount of time finding that audience, pushing financing towards that, and starting a conversation. It's just, we've tried to sell other shows in LA. I had luck with one, but the one that we've had for 6 years, and it's only because we've now attached a star to the show that we're going to get a meeting, we're going to get a conversation. That's the equation. It's you really have to stack up your shows with the biggest possible pieces of talent and connections and partnerships, and a team that is just undeniable that they can't say no to the show, because they're getting all the cream that was at the top for so long has now moved into television. So you're competing against the best of the best. So you have to be able to provide something that is as equal value or even more better. So that was a long-winded answer of saying no. My eye is definitely on trying to have it, get the show out there. It's just as important as good as the piece of content that you actually create.
No, it's a podcast. You're allowed to be as long-winded as you want. So it's
totally wonderful. Thank you for that.
Now, I guess just to start putting a bow on this, and this is something I'm always kind of fascinated with, because in my line of work or in any sort of creative endeavor, at some point there has to be a situation where you can let what you've created go. And I'm kind of curious, in the entire process of developing projects and trying to get stuff sold, and like the whole 9 yards, like at what point do you let it go, or even can you let it go, depending on, just because given how long it takes to make things these days sometimes?
Yeah, that's a great question. This one show called Whatever Linda, which was originally a web series, and now we're in development as a 1-hour show, and we just attached this big star. We shot that original web series in 2014, so it's been 6 years, and we're still trying to get it made as a TV series. And that one, it's because it's always feeling timely and it's always resonating with people that we sort of keep going with it. But boy, it's every day where we're thinking, oh, this is just not, it's never going to happen, and we have to sort of put it to bed, because it's so painful when you go through the process of trying to get it made, and there's always this little hope that something can happen, and you don't want to give up, because if you just wait that extra little bit of time, it can click. But it's such a time, financial and emotional suck on you, that at some point I don't know. I think the idea just dies. I think there's no formal grieving process. It just kind of just, it's dead. And there's certainly ideas that I've worked on for so many years, scripts that just are just, sitting in a drawer because they didn't get the traction the way they should have. And maybe in a different regime, in a different time period, it might resonate and it might work. But I think you have to be working on several different things at the same time. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, and all the best of the best that I've ever worked with have always told me that. So that's why I've always tried to work actively to have several projects going at the same time. But also, you don't want to be stretching yourself too thin, because then you're not putting in the best possible effort for each of those projects. So you have to find the right balance of how many is too many and how many is not enough. And I think it's a gut. Like, if you can, train to trust your gut and your instinct, I think when it's time it's time to let it die, and when you can move on. But it's project to project. Some have happened quicker than others. Some I'm waiting to hear. Some I'll never give up on, and some I was glad to give up on because it's just too painful to people just aren't seeing it, or you just know it's going to take too long, or things die in the details and in the deals with these things. So if you're sick of the process and you don't have the same amount of passion that you do when you started it, then I think that it's over. But I'm a hard one to give up on my stories, or like my children. So you try and strike that healthy balance when you can.
Well, and I mean, and that is so much of this business, just not giving up, just having the stubborn nature to not give up.
Yes. And knowing when that's delusional, and when it's time that you should, and put your efforts into something better. And, that's just a daily equation I have to make for myself. And I know many people do. So the hope is, you've made something, and now you use that as the thing that you try and get out into the world, and the thing that's going to keep you going and allow you not to give up and live to see another day. And the hope is that you're able to keep, parlaying that into another project, and to keep being able to make your art and tell stories.
And you know what? I mean, that is the important thing at the end of the day. And I mean, I think the thing with For the Record that really resonated with me the most is that it's tactile, not just in sort of the obvious physical tactile of the records and putting on a record and that kind of thing, but it's emotionally tactile as well. And I could feel myself getting it. There was this variety of different love stories and stories in general, but it was still something you could touch and feel and sort of make sense of. It didn't feel like it was sort of put out there in sort of a manufactured sense. It felt tactile. And now, just to put a bow on all this, because I'm leading to something, and this is a dumb question, but I love asking it because this is about music and records. But I'm going to add in movies to this too. Give me some desert island choices. Be it movies, be it stuff that you can't live without.
Okay, music, definitely Al Green's Greatest Hits. I mean, it's just that album I always turn to.
For sure.
Jesus Christ Superstar, original cast recording. As a musical fan and former musical triple threat myself, that's definitely on the Desert Island playlist. I'm trying to think of something maybe a bit more current that I don't know. Lizzo.
Okay,
she's the first one to come to mind. I mean, God, just like so joyful and wonderful and powerful, and just makes you feel good. It's just one of those things that if I was stranded on an island, that's the thing you dance to. Four Seasons, Vivaldi, the Nigel Kennedy recording. Just trying to give you all the genres here. And movies, Goodfellas for sure.
Yeah.
Fish Called Wanda. I think Network is the obvious one. Magnolia. And oh gosh, I don't know. I want to know yours. What are your desert island movies?
Well, I mean, for movie wise, I'd probably go stuff like Third Man, Kel
Oh,
Reed, and
oh yeah,
Orson
amazing.
Welles. Love that movie.
Did you see Mank? Did you watch
I
Mank?
did see Mank. I liked it quite. It's a little too inside baseball for me, but I liked it.
Yeah. It was a bit, but God, there's something so beautiful about it. I don't know. He's such an insanely talented filmmaker. But yeah, Third Man, and what a soundtrack! Like one of the most famous soundtracks ever. Is that is
Totally.
that is that soundtrack? Such a beautiful movie.
But I mean, things like Rashomon, and even go to stuff like
Oh
Big
yeah.
Lebowski that I can't live without.
Oh totally. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. That's great. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any other ones that stand out, but I mean those are the desert island choices for sure. But and that changes this year too with the pandemic,
Yeah.
definitely certain things you need to watch on repeat a little bit more, something that something like Love Actually, or something that's just going to bring a bit more heartwarming sensibilities to your body. But it's an interesting year I thought there were still some great things that got made this year, believe it or not, and looking forward to even better and bigger stuff in the new year.
No, but I mean, I agree with you on that. And I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, especially for our site, we've always been big on sort of the physical media. As much as we love streaming and all that, you need to be able to feel your art in some way, shape, or form. And I think For the Record is one of those things that you can actually feel and understand, be it, not necessarily in your hands, but it's emotionally tactile and you get it, and it resonates
Great.
across so many different boards. And I just want to say thank you again for the time today. Really appreciated it.
Oh, this is such a wonderful conversation. Thanks for asking such insightful questions, and appreciate all the compliments. And follow us at FTR series, and then give us all your details. I'd love to share the interview. This was really great.
For sure. I'll send everything to Tamar and she'll pass it on to you for sure.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks for sorry about the mix-up. I appreciate you getting back on the phone with me.
Like I said, man, it's Zoom life.
You got it. You gotta love it. Thanks, David.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.